person is dead when a motorcyclist speeding down the street behind me here.
Hey, what's up guys? So today we're talking about one of the scariest things that can happen when you're on a motorcycle, speed wobbles. And trust me, it's terrifying. I'm gonna tell you exactly what causes them, how to avoid them, and what to do if you ever find yourself in that situation. And don't worry, we'll keep it fun, informative, and maybe a little humorous too. Alright, let's jump in. So here's the deal. We're talking about speed wobbles, and they can be really dangerous. It's when your handlebars start shaking uncontrollably and things can go south really fast. But don't worry, I've got you covered with some tips on how to prevent it. First up, let's talk about tire pressure. You might think, it's fine, but trust me, it's super important. I actually learned this the hard way. So I was riding another bike the other day and the handlebars were shaking like crazy. I was like, what the heck is going on? I checked the tire pressure and sure enough, it was 8 psi lower than it should have been. That's what was causing the instability. I fixed it and the ride was night and day better. Pro tip, if you don't have one already, grab yourself a battery-powered inflator. They're cheap and work fantastic for those last-minute tire checks before you ride. I check my tire pressure all the time now, especially since I started racing. It's honestly one of the best habits I've picked up because on the track, there's no way you can neglect tire pressure. It's literally the #1 thing to remember. Make sure your tire pressure is spot on. Next up, let's talk about your steering damper. If you look down here, you'll see this little guy. It's a game changer for keeping your handlebars smooth and steady. If it's not working properly, you're way more likely to get those dreaded death wobbles. To check it, just grab your handlebars and move them side to side. There should be no resistance. If it feels like it's fighting you, then it's time for a new one. Older bikes might not have one, but don't freak out. You can get an adjustable damper for pretty cheap, and it makes a huge difference in controlling the bike at high speeds. Additionally, here's a cool fact. Track steering dampers made by Öhlins and street steering dampers made by Öhlins are not the same. The track version has a different velocity for oil movement and different valving system. The track damper is designed to make the handlebars so stiff that it's almost impossible to turn them by hand. And that's because on a track, you need that extra stiffness to prevent wobbling at high speeds. The street version, on the other hand, allows more movement. If you had a track damper on the street, it could feel way too stiff, and you might not be able to steer properly. So, if you're planning to race, you might want to swap out your street damper for a track version or get it revolved to match your needs. It's definitely something to look into or talk to a pro about. Another thing to check is your wheel bearings. If you lift up your bike and move the wheel back and forth and you feel any play, that's a problem. It could be that the bearings are shot, and that's something you definitely want to fix before you hit the road. But it's not just wheel bearings. Also check your steering bearings. Make sure your steering nut is torqued to spec. I had this issue on my ZX6R recently where my steering bearing had a tiny bit of play that you could barely notice. The only reason I knew something was wrong was because I started getting random wobbles when entering turns on the track. And since I raced that bike, I can feel every little change in the ride. I wasn't feeling that confidence I normally do, and it freaked me out. So I tore it apart, and sure enough, the steering bearing was shot. Big shout out to Andrew Westbrook from ASAP Motorsports for helping me out with that. Thanks, Andrew. Replacing the steering stem brought back the stability I was looking for, and I haven't had any crazy wobbles since. Definitely something to keep an eye on if you're racing or even just riding hard. Now, if you've got a used bike or if you're carrying a passenger, make sure your suspension is dialed in. If the suspension is set up for a lighter rider and you're much heavier, it can throw off your balance and lead to those wobbles. Same goes if you're carrying a passenger. Make sure the suspension settings match your weight and riding conditions. Now, let's talk about rider errors. Yup, sometimes it's us that causes the wobble. First thing, when you're gassing it, be smooth. Don't just slam on the throttle, especially in lower gears. Gradually roll on the gas and shift smoothly. If you gun it and shift too quickly, you're asking for trouble. And for all you thrill seekers out there, wheelies. I get it. Wheelies look cool. But if you're doing them at high speeds, especially on the highway, you're just begging for a wobble. Here's the trick. When you're coming down from a wheelie, don't just drop the front end. You need to gently bring it down and keep the throttle steady so it doesn't slam. If it slams, your bike could start shaking like crazy, and that's when things go bad. Also, your grip matters. You want to be loose and relaxed, not white-knuckling the handlebars. When you're tense, you can overcorrect, which makes things worse. But when you're relaxed, the bike can absorb those little shakes, and the steering damper will do its job. Okay, let's say the worst happens. You're in the middle of a wobble. What do? Here's the trick. Do not grab the front brake. If you slam on the front brake while your handlebars are shaking, you're going down and fast. Instead, ease off the throttle and gently apply the rear brake. Also, lean forward a little bit to help stabilize the front end. And if there's an obstacle in front of you, use your body to help steer the bike. Shift your weight to guide the bike away from danger. Just remember, stay calm and let the bike do its thing. So, in conclusion, check your tire pressure, make sure your steering damper works, keep your suspension dialed in, and ride smoothly. And for the love of all things bike related, don't be an idiot on the highway. Take care of your bike and it'll take care of you. Stay safe out there. Catch you guys next time. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if you found this useful.